Is it like that? I don't know. I've never done cocaine. I've never partaken. Like,
don't please.
I haven't partaken. Not against it. I'm just saying I've never done it. Not judging. I'm just saying I've never done it. Wrestling! Woo! Hey, how you doing, YouTube? This is your boy BrogiNaric back again with another episode of BUMP Psychology series on this channel where I review wrestling, all things wrestling related, user reactions, and I'm back again with my guest Avery Jones to do another review of the latest episode of Viceland's Dark Side of the Ring, which is Cocaine and Cowboy Boots, the Herb Abrams Story. This is going to be our full spoiler review about the episode and all the craziness that happened. But before we get into it, don't forget to give this video a like, share it, and subscribe to the channel to check out more videos and to help the channel grow. And I'm going to let my guest, Avery Jones, get his shit in. Go ahead.
Because since it's a wrestling show, you have to let me get my shit in. You guys make sure you check out my YouTube channel, the Avery Jones Podcast, where I talk everything from life lessons, relationships, controversial issues, the whole nine. You name it, 9 times out of 10 I talk about it. You can find me on most podcast platforms as well, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all that stuff. And the season premiere just came out, so you guys make sure you go to that video. It's the very first or very latest video on my channel. So please go keep running that up, keep liking it, commenting, and of course make sure you subscribe while you're there. If you don't, I'll know and I'll find you.
He will find you. But so on this, we're going to be getting into Viceland's Dark Side of the Ring, which is like one of the best things going on in wrestling right now. And this episode focuses on a little man named Herb Abrams. He's a little man. He's like 5 feet. He's a very little man. And he started his own wrestling promotion. He had money and he loves wrestling. So he was like, I want to make my own. I want to be like Vince McMahon in the WWF at the time. This was 1990 when he was trying to start this. And it didn't work out so well. I was not too familiar with the UWF. Were you familiar with this before this was?
Me either. I before this was a thing. Before this episode came out, I had no idea what the UWF was. But I'm glad I watched it to realize what it is. So
yeah, it's a pretty pivotal thing in wrestling to show like how something can go so wrong, and it's like. What the word that's used to describe Herb Abrams is a money mark, which is basically someone who has a lot of money. They're a big fan of wrestling, and they kind of want to start a business. And then a lot of wrestlers kind of just come in there to try to get as much money as they can, knowing that this is not going to work. And that's essentially what happened with Herb Abrams in the UWF. And sort of in a way, that's how some people view Tony Khan with AEW, although Tony Khan knows how to run a business, and so far he's doing pretty good, lucrative TV deals and stuff. But like that's how some people view Tony Khan. So this is kind of like the dark side of what could happen when certain businesses, even with Jeff Jarrett and TNA, it's like sometimes these businesses, if they're not handled right, can go pretty wrong pretty fast.
Right. I think Herb Abrams did that to himself, honestly.
Yeah.
He loved, as much as he loved wrestling, he loved cocaine and cowboy boots a lot more.
Yeah, exactly. Emphasis on the cowboy boots.
Right, exactly.
So one of the things they didn't mention in this episode, which I thought was pretty interesting, was there were two UWFs. There was an original UWF that was started by Cowboy Bill Watts, who is a famous wrestling promoter. And he ran Mid-South Wrestling, and then he wanted to make it bigger. Once Vince McMahon was getting bigger with the WWF, he wanted to make his territories bigger, so he called it the UWF, Universal Wrestling Federation. Problem is, he didn't copyright the name, so Herb Abrams, when he wanted to start his wrestling federation, he just took UWF, Universal Wrestling Federation, because it wasn't copyrighted. So that was one of the interesting things and sort of the shady practices of Herb Abrams.
I didn't know that.
Okay, so there's a video, as I was telling you, it's by Brian Zane, who does Wrestling with Regret, and he did a video about 2 or 4 years ago about the UWF. And that's also really funny. It kind of gives more into what the what the show actually was of the UWF, as opposed to this, which it talks about it, but it really focuses on the behind the scenes and who Herb Abrams was. But if you want to know a little more of the wackiness of the show, you can check out that video. It's pretty funny. But the episode starts off with WWE legend Mick Foley, who is probably like one of the bigger names out of this, like as small and rinky-dink of a promotion that this was. There was a lot of big names involved with the UWF, and at the time, Cactus Jack was like one of the lower names. He wasn't a huge star just yet. He was on the rise, you know.
I didn't know why Mick Foley was in the documentary because Cactus Jack is the one that was actually in the documentary.
Okay, all right. Okay, no, I understand.
Cactus Jack should have been.
Yeah, we couldn't get any word from Cactus Jack, but Foley was there to tell us what he was thinking.
Right.
I guess. But and it's interesting. He's one of the numerous people that appear in this who was like, they could kind of tell Herb might have been full of shit, but they really liked his energy, and he seemed very positive, and he was very convincing. So, and he was kind of not super early in his career, but he was still trying to make a name for himself. So he was like, "Yeah, I buy into it," and he signed on with Herb Abrams. And he started to realize that, okay, maybe this isn't going to be what he thinks it's going to be.
Right.
And in a way, to me, it kind of feels like it's not quite ECW. Like the way it's like, you know how like ECW came on the scene, it was like a big game changer. It was something different, something unique, and it made its mark in the business. UWF could have been that, but it just wasn't. It just wasn't going to get to that point. You know what I'm saying?
Right. It's like kind of like if Tony Khan did what he felt was over and not what people wanted to see.
Yeah.
That's how kind of Herb Abrams was carrying things. He was just kind of like, you know, I think as a wrestling fan, I would want to see it, and so this is how I'm going to book it, opposed to let me figure out what these fans actually want to see. ECW knew that their fans wanted to see violence, hardcore stuff like that, so that's what they did.
Yeah, and they talk about how like he's never been a promoter. This was like his first time promoting anything, and he was just not good at it.
At all.
He was just not good at it at all. So he couldn't write interesting storylines, which is weird that he didn't hire someone. Usually other people, like say when Ted Turner had WCW, he wasn't writing the show. He hired someone to do the job. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, why didn't he do that? I guess he was just so conceited and so wanted it to be from him that he trying to be like Vince, that it just didn't work out. But even Vince doesn't always write everything. He okays it, but he doesn't like always come up with it.
He doesn't write it. He might sit in the meetings, but he doesn't write that stuff.
But he controls what happens. Nothing happens without his say so.
Exactly.
That's what I mean. So yeah, we got Mick Foley is there, but even after that, we're introduced to a guy named John Arezzi, who he's a wrestling historian, and he's like a convention planner. He runs conventions, and he ran these some of the first big fan conventions for wrestling back in the 90s. And that's how Herb Abrams, he linked up with him, and he told John Arezzi that, hey, I'm starting my own wrestling business, and I got the living legend himself, Bruno Sammartino, on my side. Now, that's a big deal, because Bruno was kind of like the Hulk Hogan before Hulk Hogan in a way. Like, he was like the big, one of the big wrestling champions back in like the 70s and like late 60s. So to have someone like him on your side, that's pretty legit, you know? That would be like today, someone would be like, hey, I got my own money and I'm starting a company with The Rock helping produce, you know? It was like that, you know?
Right. It gets legitimized once you put the names to it.
Yeah. And so he uses that convention to talk to other wrestlers who are there at the convention. And then there we see Rick Rude and footage of Ric Flair and Billy Graham, and I believe, I'm not sure because I couldn't directly see her face, but I believe that was Nancy Benoit in that B-roll that they showed of the wrestlers at the convention.
Really? I saw Mick Foley, but
yeah, I think that was Nancy Benoit, but I'm not. If not Nancy, it might have been
Miss Elizabeth.
Yeah, I was thinking Elizabeth, but I don't think it was Elizabeth. It seemed more like Nancy Benoit to me, but it could have been Miss Elizabeth. But yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting. So Herb is like, he talks to all these different people, and he gets some big names. I'm going to go down the list of some of the people he had. So he had Bruno Sammartino. Captain Lou Albano, aka Mario from the Super Mario Super Show. Dr. Death Steve Williams, who is a badass. If you watch the Brawl episode, you'll be familiar with him. Who's Dan Spivey, who's another big name wrestler. Paul Orndorff, Mr. Wonderful himself.
When I saw him, I was just like, I was just like, what? He had Paul Orndorff?
Yeah, he had Paul Orndorff. He had Bob Orton, who is Randy Orton's dad.
Right.
Friggin' Bam Bam Bigelow. I was not expecting to see Bam Bam Bigelow.
I wasn't either.
Like, it's like, holy shit. Like, he had a lot of, and there was a couple of others. And then there was another wrestler who was kind of like his kind of top, I guess, guy for a bit. And that was B. Brian Blair, who, if you're not familiar with B. Brian Blair, he's a wrestling legend. Not necessarily a WWE legend, but a wrestling legend. He's been in the business for a long time. He was with a tag team called the Killer Bees back in like the 80s, late 80s and mid 80s, with Jumpin' Jim Brunzell. Not the biggest tag team in the WWF history, but like a known team, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And he's brought in, he's kind of, I guess, because it was said that him and Dan Spivey were like feuding within the series or whatever. And we get to hear his accounts of how, you know, Herb got him to sign on. He thought Herb was legit too, so he signs on. And one of the things they don't mention, which is one of the mysterious things about how Herb got all the money for this, is because no one really knew what his job was. You know, they were talking about like, how did he get all this money?
He's probably selling coke.
Well, you would probably think that, right? But
right. Out of the place.
Right. Yeah, that actually would have made sense too. It was like selling coke on the side. That actually would have made a hell of a lot of sense.
Because he was doing like you're telling me that this short man knows what women, plus size women, want to wear as far as dresses are concerned, because you know he owned that store.
He got an inside
have fashion sense, but he also could be selling coke out of there too.
True. Yeah, that's what they said. That it turns out he owned fashion stores called I'm a Big Girl Now, and they sold women's clothing for plus size, basically like his own like Lane Bryant type of deal. But
dollars from that though.
Well, that was the thing. When I was listening, they were saying like it wasn't just one company. He had opened and closed various versions of that store, and he's like accumulated money from that. That's how he was making his money. But with the UWF, most of the money he was spending into it was from investors. And B. Brian Blair, what they didn't have in the episode is he said one of his friends helped invested money into the company. And that's where a lot of the money and the drugs were being paid with was other people's money, even though he had his own money, like they established in the at one point in the episode. It's like he had two bank accounts. He had the one bank account that had his millions of dollars, and then he had the other bank account that had no money in it. That's what he was writing all the checks on, and that's how the checks was bouncing. So, yeah, shit's crazy. What was it? So yeah. So they have the they're starting the show out. And we're introduced to another guy we're introduced to, which is Steve Ray, Wild Thing Steve Ray, who was another one of the, I would say he's probably like the top young talent. He was like the homegrown talent that I guess Herb was wanting to build. Kind of seemed like he had sort of a Shawn Michael-ish type of vibe to him, maybe. A little bit. You know, he had the long blonde hair. He was like kind of rockersy a little bit.
Right. I think they like kind of they put him in the company too. I guess they set him up for success, I guess. Yeah,
they was trying to push him as like their young guy. So and he's very respectful of Herb, even though like once again like all the other people they knew, he probably wasn't 100% about everything. But you know, Herb was willing to take him in under his wing. And we're also introduced to what's the guy's? Oh, Rick Allen, aka wrestler Sonny Beach. Who was another? Yeah, that was a weird. I don't like that name. I guess he had like Surfer Dude. Yeah, it was early '90s. It looked terrible though. He looked not like a Surfer Dude at all. It looked corny, but he seems like a cool guy. He's very loyal to Herb as well. Like I was telling you, he looks like an old retired superhero, like Mr. Incredible. Like he looked like he still got size to him, but he kind of looks a little worn down.
Exactly.
He seemed like a cool guy though. Sunny Beach. Hold on, what did I write to know that? Oh yeah, close and low to Herb. Yeah. So And the show's going on, and they don't really get into it, but like Herb was a commentator as well as the promoter, and he sucked at it. He had Bruno Sammartino commentating. He was bad at it, but you can tell Bruno, yeah,
They're both very bad at
right, at commentating. But Bruno was like having fun because this is also, as Herb is, he's wanting this to be a big thing, and there's a moment in the episode where they mentioned he has a meeting with Vince McMahon. And he tries to convince Vince to say, hey, you know, you run to your company and my company is on the West Coast. Maybe we can make a deal and I can like help promote the West Coast for WWF. We make it. And Vince was just like, dude, get out of here. Like what the fuck? Like, dude, go. And
who are you?
Right. Well, as I was listening, apparently he just he knew some people and he kind of like conned his way into talking to Vince. And apparently his charm did not work on Vince. Like his charm worked on everybody else, but it didn't work on Vince. And Vince like, dude, like I'm king of the bullshit. Get the fuck out of my face. I'm not falling for this. And from that moment, it seemed like Herb just had it out for Vince. Like everything he did was just to be like, F you, Vince McMahon.
So much so that's the cool part where it was like, I forgot the guy's name, his best friend.
Lenny Duke, who was the MVP of this episode. Lenny Duke.
Exactly, or Lenny Duke. So
yeah.
When you like close the championship, they were just cool. Like it says "F you" on the side.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. It was, you close it, and then it's the front with the sides, and it's got the "F you" on it, and that's supposed to be like an "F you" to Vince in the WWF. Like that's petty. Shit. That's exactly. Vince like, I'm not looking at this bullshit. Well, he was at one point, but and so he's like and there was that moment in the episode where they show like a small Vince and then like the cowboy boot trying to crush him. That shit was ridiculous.
I was like, what?
I was like, y'all tripping, but that is fucking hilarious. So things are going, and you know, the matches, they don't talk about it, but like a lot of the matches were like DQs and countouts. Like there was, you know, messy finishes because some of these guys are big legends and they don't want to job or lose, and it's a lot of dumb shit. And you know, he doesn't know how to book it, so it's just like, oh, it's a count out, or oh, it's a disqualification, oh, we'll do this next week.
This match.
Yeah, we'll restart the match, and then oh, now it's a count out. You know, it's like dumb shit like that. So not great programming. But he's still putting money into it. He's like up in the merchandise, and they showed those shitty T-shirts that they had with the UWF logos. And then the friggin' cookies, as opposed to like action figures and like what's the WWF ice cream bars? He had cookies, oatmeal cookies.
I was thinking that those are actually selling well because they kept talking about them. They was just like, oh yeah, and then you got the Herbie cookies.
Yeah, the Herbie cookies, the B. Brian Blair cookies, the Dr. Death Steve William cookies, the Wild Thing Steve Ray cookie. Like it's so goofy. They're just various flavored oatmeal cookies. But as I was saying on the JR thing, they said that the wrestlers never really saw the cookies. The cookies only I don't think they were actually ever made enough to sell to the people. They were only sold to like the production teams. What? So it was one of those sketchy things where it's like, hey, we got cookies for sale, but they would never quite reach the public, I'm guessing. It was kind of weird. Like it's like, weird.
It's like, oh, they didn't make it seem like it was.
Right. It's like, oh, it's more sketchy shit. Okay, I got it. So as we go on, we're introduced, Lenny Duke, who was a producer. He worked in production. He, handling the cameras and recording and all of that for the UWF, and he considers Herb to be his best friend. This guy was super. He seemed like a nice man. He seemed like really nice,
very nice.
And like he knew Herb had his problems, and he was like the one, it seems, that was really trying to get him some help. There's a moment where he's like, "Look, you got to get in rehab, man. This shit is not cool." And one of the things they don't say, but he was never paid while he was working for the UWF.
Oh wow, really?
Yes, that's
so
crazy,
left
right?
A paying job to go work for this crazy man.
Apparently, he was just a big fan of wrestling and was so wanting to be involved with wrestling. And then he runs into Herb, and Herb is, he hits it off with Herb. So he's just like, hey, I'm here to help you. But once that friendship started to get rocky, he did eventually like, all right, I got to go. This shit's not, not working out. But like, that was interesting to hear that he wasn't being paid when they were filming all of that shit. It was like,
that's crazy. It's like, and he was such a nice man because it seemed like every time Herb was like, cocaine. It's just like he's kind of like, don't do that.
Yeah, he's like in the corner, like, dude, this is not how we're gonna run this show, man. This is not good.
This man never got paid.
Yeah.
This being that long, man.
Yeah, for like 6 years this lasted from 1990 to 96 is when the UWF like, but he left. I think he left in like 90. He wasn't there in the end. He left at some point like 95, 94ish. So he wasn't there for the entire run, but he did leave eventually. So the show's going, and then this is the thing. Herb Abrams gets a big like star to come to the show. It's friggin' Andre the Giant.
Right.
Which is like, holy shit, it's Andre. Granted, it's 91, and he's like, what, 2 years away from dying, but it's like, hey.
He's way out of his prime.
He's way out of his prime, but it's fucking Andre the Giant.
It's Andre the Giant. He's still big as hell.
Yeah, and he's there, and he's like, oh, yeah, UWF is the shit. I like it. I'm awesome. This is the best.
Basically.
That's basically what it's doing. And then I guess they show a clip of him on the radio or whatever, like, yeah, I just signed Andre the Giant to like an exclusive contract. And the guy's like, well, he's out of his prime. He's like, it's Andre the Giant. And he's right. It is Andre the Giant.
Well, you got a point, sir.
Right. But immediately after that, like, what was like probably like a couple weeks after that, his ass was back at WWF because Vince McMahon got on the phone, was like, we're not having this. And he was back in the WWF for like his last couple appearances in that company before he passes away. So that further made him angry at old Vince McMahon for taking away his coup. So
right.
It's just
talking about lucrative long-term contract, and I was like, that wasn't long at all.
Yeah, right. That was like what, like one appearance maybe he did. It's pretty crazy.
I guess contracts weren't ironclad back then.
Shit. I mean, there's Herb, so maybe there wasn't an actual contract. But then again, there's also Vince, and he knows how to, loophole his way out of shit. So
true.
Who knows? But very fucking funny.
He convinced a police. Well, he convinced police that a man didn't kill another.
Allegedly, he allegedly did that.
He allegedly
did that. We can't confirm.
Vince paid to have that word put right there.
Hey, he allegedly. And you watched the Jimmy Snuka episode. It's a little shady, but all we know that was
allegedly. But
that was all hearsay about that briefcase, and the sheriff ain't no shit. He was like, I don't recall. So hey,
I don't know nothing.
Yeah, it's a legend. So. Another person we're introduced to is Marty Yesberg, who was, I thought, hilarious. He was known as Colonel Red. He was a big fat manager from, was he like North Carolina or South Carolina, somewhere?
I think, yeah, it was South Carolina.
South Carolina. Kind of had like a boss hog kind of look to him, and he was a manager. He was, there, and he recalls the story of when he first met Herb. Why don't you give the rundown of that?
That's a beautiful story. So basically, Herb, he has a whole bunch of money. So what he does, he's trying to get him on with UWF. So he buys him this really lavish, what is it, like a townhouse or like a suite?
It was a suite in a hotel room.
Suite in a hotel room.
Yeah.
And so he gets there, and this man's from like down South Carolina. So he's like, wow, look at all this stuff, man.
And then like Hollywood.
Right, exactly. He's like, we live in lavish. He comes in, and then after he comes in, he sits down, and the next thing you know, Herb, he hears a knock on the door. He comes in. I think
it was like he said it was like an hour, sometime later. Herb comes in.
Right, exactly. Herb comes in, and he got 2 hookers, and some cocaine.
Yeah.
And so basically, the dude's like, he comes in with these women, and he's from South Carolina now.
As he said, I've never seen. He said these weren't no snaggletooth hookers you used to. These were some Hollywood honeys. That was dying when he said that.
He's like, they got all they toofuses.
Yeah, exactly.
So he's like, wow. So he's like basking in that, and then so basically he's basking in the hookers and stuff like that, and then he sees the cocaine. He's like, oh, I don't know what's about to happen.
Yeah.
And so he was saying how uncomfortable he was because now Herb's having sex with the hookers.
Yeah, because he claims he didn't partake, which. I ain't buying that part.
None of that.
The way they depicted it was he was sitting in the corner and the hooker was trying to get with him. He was like, be gone, wink, shit. And they went over to bang Herb and his cowboy boots, butt ass nigga. He just sat there the whole.
He's like, I don't buy like going like this. I was like, come on.
I don't buy. He sat in a room for like a long time while someone else is banging 2 hookers. I don't buy that.
He was like,
unless that was his thing. Unless that was his thing, and he was off in the corner doing him. But other than that, I don't buy it.
He was like, I was kind of like, I wanted out of that room. I was very uncomfortable, but it was on his dime. And then he was like, I couldn't call the police because the room was in my name.
Right. He's like, yeah. He's like, I feel like the LAPD about to knock the door down. Can't call the cops because the room's in my name.
Like, the room's in my name. I'm like, what? And in the way he was describing it, I'm like.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, man.
You had some coke and you had a piece of them.
You was fucking them.
It was two of them.
Exactly. Stop it. So he, as things are starting to go worse, Herb decides to kind of before Vince McMahon even did it, he starts to make himself sort of the center of the promotion, right. And he starts to become more involved in their matches and more involved on screen. They show a clip of him. I think it was it Dan Spivey was like pushing him back or whatever, some shit like that.
Yeah, and then him and the fat guy, the Colonel dude.
Yeah, Colonel Red. Yeah.
Yeah, they had a rivalry together.
Yeah.
Apparently, that's like the hottest time.
Yeah, that was probably the hottest feud they had was between a manager and the commentator. That would have been like, it's like the hottest feud is between Michael Cole and Coachman. It's like the hottest feud in WWF.
Right now.
It's Michael Cole versus Jonathan Coachman. Like, what? What the fuck is going on? We have the Undertaker. No. Coachman Michaels.
We got Paul Orndorff. We got Bam Bam Bigelow. We got Cactus Jack. But the hottest thing going right now, is two regular men. Two
guys who do not know how to wrestle, who aren't wrestlers. And they showed it was like a thing. He hit him in the head with a cane, and then he like, I guess he like, gigged or whatever, because that was a promo where he's like shouting and he's like bleeding like it's friggin' ECW.
No, he like slammed that into his head like that was the hard way.
Oh, okay. Well, whatever. It was. Yeah, he was deeply into it. It was insane. Like, he really put himself on the line. Like I said, before Vince even did it, because when Vince did it was like the highest peak in the company, in terms of like TV and fan interest and all that. So it's like, it's kind of interesting how it's like he had good ideas. It's just execution was trash. Right. Execution was trash. So TV is still going, so you got a wrestling promotion. So what do? You do a pay-per-view. And they did their first pay-per-view, which was called Beach Brawl. And
Brawl at the Beach.
yeah, Beach Brawl, or Brawl at the Beach. One of them. It was either Beach Brawl or Brawl at the. I got Beach Brawl written down, so I'm going with that. I don't know. Anyway,
there we go.
It was their pay-per-view, kind of like Bash at the Beach sounding type of deal. And they had it. I think it was down in Florida. They said it was in Florida, but it was in an area of Florida that wasn't. It was like hours away from most of like where most of the citizens could get to it in a reasonable time. It was like a fancy building, very fancy, way too expensive for what it should have been.
Right.
And I think Lenny Dude was like, because Herb was telling him like, oh yeah, we got tickets sold and da-da-da, but like once Lenny saw the building, or maybe it was Sunny Beach, I think it was, when he said once he saw the building, he realized like, yeah, this place is not sold out. This is way too big. He was like,
we can't sell this out.
Yeah, this is way too big. And he couldn't. It
was the guy, his best friend.
Oh, it was Lenny? Okay.
Yeah, he came in there, he walked and he was like, yeah, we ain't. No.
He's like,
this is the biggest building I've ever been in my entire life.
I love how Lenny said it. He was like, instead of saying Herb lied, he was like, yeah, something was mishandled at some point. Like he's like
so nice.
I love how he said that. It's like, oh, he lied. It's like, no, I think something was just mishandled.
Something was mishandled.
Yeah. I was like, damn. So Beach Brawl has the lowest pay-per-view buy rate in the history of pay-per-views. I thought it was just wrestling, but apparently it's just the lowest buy rate in like pay-per-view. Like, no one would bother going to pay-per-view with this low amount of interest, but Herb did it, and
one.
It was like and like I think Brian Blair was like, it was like 600 or 700 people who actually bothered to buy it or some shit like that. That's how low it was,
right?
To buy the pay-per-view, and then it was even less people, probably about like 300 or so that was there for the pay-per-view or something like that.
I like how he like promoted it on the radio. He was like, "Yeah, we're doing a beach brawl, and that's exactly what it's about to be, a brawl at the beach."
Yeah, exactly. That's how he said it too. Yeah, it's like, damn. He was not a good hype man. He tried, but he was not. He was that good in that role, and so that didn't work. And then we get into more stories about various stories of people being like, "Hey, we need some money. Like these checks are starting to bounce. We're not getting paid." And various stories of people trying to track him down. And whenever they would go to his rooms, he's conveniently there, butt ass naked in his cowboy boots, with some hookers and some cocaine. And that was like a constant thing. He's like,
it wasn't into it. I like how like as you progress through the story, it was like it wasn't odd to find him butt naked.
Yeah, it wasn't odd to find that. That was like his jam. He was just butt naked, but he always had them cowboy boots on.
Remember when the guy said he walked through the he walked in the hotel room and he wrote or he sees the dude butt naked, or he sees her butt naked. He has two hookers.
Yeah.
He has coke on both ends of the both nightstands.
Oh, nightstands. Yeah, I think that was Brian Blair who said that. Yeah.
Right. And then he was saying that he was about to write the hookers a check, wrote a check for $2,000.
$2,000, that's right. Yeah, $2,000 each. Because Brian Blair was like, oh, so that's where the money's going.
Right. He was like, oh, that's how he's not paying us.
Right. Because the money's going to the hooker. It's like, oh, okay. And like I said, Brian Blair was one of the people who got investors. And it turns out that the guy that was investing, his brother was the one sending over the money, but he was actually sending over more money than what the guy thought his was sending. So that kind of fucked up his family situation too. So it's kind of like a lot of chaos is going on surrounding this situation. And so yeah, and there was another story where it was like the crew guys came up to him, was like, hey, we need to know. I think it was Marty Yesberg was telling him telling the story. He was like, yeah, we're looking for some money. And he's like, all right. So he takes him to the office and he gets on the phone with the bank. And the bank says he's got like $1 million or so, $2 million or so money in the bank account. And so the people are like, okay, so he does have the money. We'll get it, you know. So they leave. But we find out he actually had two bank accounts. There was his personal bank account, which had the millions of dollars. And then there was the other bank account that had nothing in it, and that was the one he was writing the checks with.
Right.
So shit was bouncing, and Lenny Duke was like, hey, he keeps writing checks, and I keep telling people, do not accept the checks. Never accept the checks.
I never understood why. I was like, man, you're supposed to be my stick man. You know what I'm saying? You're supposed to be my best friend. Don't tell them that they
Wait, you better tell them, because people's trying to kill him. Wasn't it like Stevie Ray said some dudes at the show? There was a story allegedly that they tried to produce some camera workers and stage workers tried to throw him off the 5-story balcony at the hotel, and he was butt ass naked.
That was the same night. That's what they made it seem like. Is basically they found out that the checks bounced, or there was no money in the account.
Okay.
And once they found that out, they was just like, yeah, we about to beat this nigga ass.
Yeah. So and there was some other stories people had told. That was various stories of him running around butt ass naked. One of the things.
Oh no, I was about to say I know the story you're about to tell. I think where he was like in the hotel room with the hookers. And
no, that's a little bit later. That's a little bit later. That's a little bit later to the demise. But there was the stories of like he was always paranoid. He was like, people are coming to get me. He was always like ripping up. He was also a baseball bat. That was the other thing. He would always have a baseball bat, and he would wreck rooms looking for bugs and ripping up pillowcases and cushions looking for bugs.
Because coke will do that to you.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so the guy, he what was the thing with Marty Yesberg? He was looking through the people. He's like, they're coming for me. And then like he backed away, and Marty was like, yeah, there's people coming. He said, yeah, people coming.
Because I was like, I loved how he was like, reenacting it. He was like, he loved cushions. He loved cushions. He's like, he was like the feathers would be all over the floor.
Yeah,
he'd get the peephole, and he'd be like, shh, 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 shh. You hear them? They coming. He was like, yeah, they coming.
They coming. It's like, long as I get paid, like I don't give a fuck. They coming, bro. They definitely up in this bitch. What my check at? So
right,
this shit keeps going down. They're gaining certain stars coming in. Oh, another one of the stars they didn't mention in the documentary Psycho Sid Vicious was
Oh wow.
Yeah, Psycho Sid was involved in this too. So because they had a reunion with him and Dan Spivey, they were the tag team, the Skyscrapers in WCW. So there was like a mini reunion type of deal going on with the two of them.
Okay.
Yeah, interesting, right?
It's very interesting.
Yeah, let me write my notes real quick. So, yeah, so things are continuously going down. They're losing certain TV deals and stuff. And he decides to have one last big show, which they don't really express. It was not a pay-per-view. It was just a big show that they did. And they get it at the MGM Hotel in Las Vegas. They call it the Blackjack Brawl. And it was going to be this big, extravagant show. Once again, this is not a pay-per-view. It's just a show to do in Vegas because it's Vegas. And, that's right, because they were talking about WrestleMania 9 had happened at Vegas.
Right, and he was trying to compete with that because...
And so Herb was like, well, fuck it, I'm going to do my own show in Vegas too. And it's like, you don't have to do that, dude. Like, what? Why?
So let me... Can I tell the story behind the yeah. So basically they do the MGM, and then Herb is standing in the suite, or in his suite, overlooking the hotel.
Yeah, I think with Mick Foley. Yeah,
with Mick Foley. And so he was just like, we got the MGM, man, but when I tell you the fans are gonna go ballistic for something, I got something in store for them.
Right? And Foley's like, Foley's like, all right, what is it? You know, he's like, okay, cool, what is it?
He's like, I got some yellow boots.
He's like, I got some yellow boots with UWF on the motherfuckers.
He's like, man, they gonna go crazy on these ones.
They're gonna do what? Huh?
And Mick Foley's like,
what?
I just love how he figured that like fans would go like ballistic and be like, his boots would be so over.
Yeah, his boots would be over as hell. That like, they're like, oh my god, them boots though. So
this wrestling is trash, but them boots
is fire, no doubt. Okay, so they did, so they do this big show once again, not a pay-per-view, and one of the wrestlers that was there, which is a throwback to another episode, was Jimmy Superfly Snuka.
He was there, wasn't he?
Yes.
That's
right. Remember the Superfly Snuka episode where they're like, yeah, after this, his career kind of went to the shits.
Right.
This is one of those moments.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I didn't like. I probably caught him from the corner of my eye, but
he was there. He had the match with Foley. He was the one having the match with Cactus Jack.
That's right. That's it.
Yeah, he was having the match with Cactus Jack.
And he was like, "Are you gonna say it?"
Yeah, go ahead.
Basically, he was like, he was like, "Hey brother, what are we doing here?" Cactus Jack, like, we can do whatever the fuck we want to do.
Exactly. He's like, "Fuck it, let's just fight
the show."
Yeah, it's like nobody give a shit. Yeah, because they was also talking about like how Herb was numerous times throughout the night was going back to the back and then coming back out. Basically, he's going to the bathroom, smelling some coke, coming back out, and they got the clips of him acting crazy and shit. And yeah, Mick Foley, Cactus Jack and Snuka had a count out. They was just fighting in the stands because it was a big arena. No, not a lot of people there, probably about like 300, 200 people there. And they had to cut out the lights to make it seem like there wasn't that many people there. So it's like, yeah, shit is crazy.
Right.
So that doesn't go well. And that was like one of the last big, that was like the last big show they ever did with the UWF.
Mind you, this man was coked out of his mind.
Out of his mind.
The like the stuff that he was doing during the show, he was just like yelling and screaming.
Yeah, they showed those clips of him just like, this is gonna be an amazing thing. It's like,
amazing. Do you know? But them boots was fire though.
These boots though.
These boots were amazing.
It was like Steve Williams had a match. Sid was there. Who else was there? Dr. Death. I'm pretty sure Spivey, and I think. Oh, Bam Bam was there. Bam Bam Bigelow was there. Like, they had a pretty solid lineup. You know, these were all guys who would either go back to WCW or go back to WWF. These were some name guys, you know?
Right. Cactus Jack was saying that he didn't mind wrestling in front of 200 people, but he was like, that was at an armory, so.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but he used it as a time to experiment, you know, to get to work on his character, to work on some crazy shit, to, you know, different type of actions to do. So he made the best of the situation.
All right.
And so I think that was when they were saying he took some time off. Lenny Dude kind of got to him like, dude, you need to go to rehab. And they said like, Herb kind of disappeared for a while, and he stopped working in. I think he was still working with the company, kind of, but he left Hollywood and went back to New York. And they showed some footage in '96 of him at the office, seeming, for the most part, seeming sober, and he's like talking to people and shit.
My question is, this company obviously has gone under. So I'm like, what the hell you got an office for?
Because he still runs his clothing business. He got.
Well, true. I forgot all about the clothing business.
Yeah.
But it's just like, because he had the UWF sign, I would just assume. I'm like, what are you doing for the company? This shit dead.
He's fouling shit and
trying to forge his books.
Yeah, forge his stuff. Because that was the thing they mentioned on that JR thing. Is like he was basically a con man. He was. They mentioned as a moment he stole his sister's identity and used her name to make to sign up for credit cards and then run up the cards and not pay it back. So, but even though he did stuff like that, she still loves him. Like even though he did all this shitty shit, people like he was a nice guy. He was, he was someone I kind of like being with. It's a very interesting dynamic.
It is,
and so. Lenny Duke, catches up with him like, okay, I'm glad to see you kind of getting sober or whatever. And then one day he just doesn't show up to work. And I think it was Rick Allen who was the one who's like, well, that's kind of normal for Herb. There'll be certain days he'll be at the office and there'll be like a day or two where he's not there at the office. And then he'll be back at the office. That's kind of what Herb does. But this was interesting because he just didn't show up for like a couple of days. And then I think it was Lenny Duke. His wife had got a phone call, and it was from Rick Allen. It was in 1996, July 23rd, 1996. And it's Rick Allen telling Lenny Duke's wife that, hey, I just heard that Herb is dead, and he's heartbroken. And then he gets on the phone with Rick, and then they're both heartbroken because they're hearing that Herb died.
Sunny Beach told. His name's Lenny, right?
Yeah, Lenny.
Yeah, Sunny Beach told Lenny.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So then there comes into the mystery of, well, how did he die? Because they weren't there, and it was this various takes on how did this man Herb Abrams die.
This was crazy.
Yeah. So you got the main consensus is he was somewhere in the office with some hookers, and one of the hookers was like he was going to pay them with a check, and she was like, no, don't give me a check, it's supposed to be give me the money. And
this was I think
was that earlier?
Was like, yeah, that was a little bit.
That was a different stuff. Okay, that was a different story where
the
pimps was trying to get him, and that was when he was running with the baseball bat. So, but this time it's like something was going on. He was with the hookers. He's butt naked in cowboy boots, covered in baby oil. This is one of the versions.
In his office in New York.
And then he's getting chased, or he's chasing after the hookers, and he's down in the street, butt-ass naked. He gets arrested, and then it's like either the police show up, arrest him, and he has a heart attack in the police car. There's a version he was chasing one of the hookers with the bat, and he like ran into the door and kind of got stumbled, and that caused the heart attack. He was taken to the hospital after he was arrested, and then he had a heart attack and died. So there's all these different conflicting versions of how it went down,
There's one where they're saying that he probably he took his clothes off when he got to the police or the jail,
mm-hmm.
and then he had a seizure there and then died.
And died in the jail cell. Yeah.
You forgot the other one, or the first one, where they were saying that the police officers they were saying
sodomized him.
I was sodomized him with the batons.
That was the one when Steve Ray said someone had told him that he got butt raped by the police with the batons. It's like, wait, what? It was like Steve Ray was like, that don't even make no damn sense.
Right.
What is going on? So, and that's like an urban legend of all the different ways this Herb Abrams had died. And then we get the crazy one from Marty Esberg, where he talks about, he's like, I don't think he's dead. And it's like, okay, you always got that one.
Right.
And he's like, I think Herb faked his death. And it's because he said he runs a promotion in South Carolina. He's like, some years ago, one of the guys that was running it said he calls it the UWF as well. And he said some short guy who showed up in jeans and cowboy boots who was yelling at him like, hey, you can't use that trademark, and he was, you know, I'll sue you and da 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 da. He's like, so I don't know, he might be alive, and I'm like, nah.
He's like, I shouldn't talk. He was like, I don't want to talk ill of the dead. If he is.
Yeah, if he is. Yeah, he did do that, right? If he is. I was like, all right, bro. I was liking you, but now you kind of going off the deep end with this one.
I mean, it could be a possibility because
I'm not buying it.
Why not?
Because what Lenny said, Lenny was like, look, if he was dead, he would have called out to me. Like he would have sent me a message. He would have said, you know, let me know he's all right. And it's been 30 years and I ain't heard from the guy. What was the other one who was like, was it Brian Blair? I think it was. I think it was Brian Blair who was like, yeah, he could not stay out of the limelight for 10 seconds, let alone 30 years. So no, there's no way that Herb Abrams is alive. I was like, that was a good point.
Right.
And there was someone else who had said something. Oh, Mick Foley. They'd asked him. They was like, what do you think? If Herb was alive, what do you think he would be doing now? He was like, he'd be in jail.
No,
he's like,
no, that was the funniest part. He was like, he was like, what do you think he'd be doing? He was like, time.
Yeah, time. Yeah, that's what he was like, time. He's like, I just don't see Herb keeping up with his taxes. He would have got locked the fuck up. I was like, yeah, not the cocaine. It was the taxes. I'm like, yeah, that's usually how it goes. It is like, yeah.
Time, bro, I popped for that. I was like, man, that was hilarious.
That was hilarious.
Like, yeah, we'd probably be sharing a glass of milk and some Herbie cookies.
Eating some Herbie cookies. Visited him. And they showed off his little dog. He had a little white dog called, nicknamed him Cokie. And I think Rick Allen said he had, Rick Allen had said he was taking care of the dog after Herb had died. And they show his grave site and everything. And one of the other things that was mentioned in that JR podcast was that because of all the con stuff, Herb had manipulated it to where he could have the company in the dog's name. So just in case something went down, it was the dog's name, not him. Like, I was like, that is some shady ass shit.
Genius.
But brilliant, exactly. But brilliant. Like, this is the dog. I'm Herb Abrams. Cokie is on this motherfucking lease, not me.
Cokie?
Yeah. Well, that was the nickname.
Like little handcuff.
Mm-hmm. Like, he got to go away. That
ain't me.
That ain't me. Yeah, man. So that's pretty much it. And then, and everyone's just talking about all that. So, yeah, it's a crazy. I was not familiar with this shit, but it was a very interesting.
You said that you had something interesting to say about the Cokie dog, didn't you?
That was the thing. It was the business he put the business in the dog's name.
That's hilarious.
Or one of his businesses. Yeah, that shit is
this is a fun episode.
Insane.
I'm sad the man had to die that way, but
like Brian Blair said, he did what he loved doing best. Cocaine and hookers.
Right.
I was like, yeah, at the end of the day, he did. So that's what it is, you know. Oh, that was that moment when Lindy Duke broke down thinking about him. That was the moment when Steve Ray broke down, but he was just like, Herb gave me a shot. He believed in me, and I'll never forget that. Like that was pretty deep when he was talking about that.
Right. Exactly. I enjoyed it. I mean, I wouldn't give it an A, but I mean, I'd give it a
maybe
B plus.
Yeah.
B plus. It's fine.
Yeah, solid. I really, just in terms of like not knowing what the hell most of this was.
Right. I think they do a really good job of people to come in and just be able to sit down and watch it and make it easy to watch. Where you're like, who's this? What happened? Who's that? I don't know. I think anybody can really pick this documentary up and sit down and be interested in what's going on and actually want to look more into it. Honestly.
Hell yeah. Yep. But let's see, what else? Is there any other thing? Oh, there was some other slight things they mentioned. When he was announcing the company, he was like black. I think was it Blackjack? I think it was Blackjack Mulligan. Is it Blackjack Mulligan?
It might have been.
Whichever one is Barry Windham's dad. He was like, he's going to be one of my bookers. Which at the time he was like in jail or some shit.
Oh,
and then he was like, oh yeah, by the way, Bruiser Brody is going to be a part of the company, which died a year ago, but whatever.
Right.
So that kind of shows the insanity of Herb Abrams.
And then the story about him being in the hotel room with the hookers. So basically, what happened was he tried to he bought like hookers like he normally does and tried to pay her in a check. She was like, "No, this isn't how this works." And he was like, "No, you take my check. You're fine.
Yeah,
Take it.
yeah.
I'm good for it. It's in there." And
Yeah.
then thugs bust through the door, and Herb Abrams hops out of the window.
That's right. Running down the
Butt-ass
street,
naked.
butt ass naked. Yeah, and he called up Steve Ray. Was like, "Yo, what do I do?" And Steve was
Right.
like, "I don't know. Make some noise. Get
Make
arrested.
some noise. Get arrested. He was like,
Be
"What-"
safe, I guess. I don't fucking know."
He's like, I mean, he was like, looking back on it, probably wasn't the best advice to give him, but
Right. Yeah. He did. Alright. He survived. But yeah.
right.
That
He's like,
was
"Oh no,
hilarious.
make noise. Do something. Commit a crime. Get
Right,
arrested."
draw some attention. You'll be safe. And then he was like, "Yeah, she probably has contacts in prison, so maybe that one wouldn't have been the best
Right.
idea."
Exactly.
But yeah, shit's insane. Check it out. It's on Viceland, Dark Side of the Ring. And the next episode, this is the episode that I'm like the least excited about, but it'll probably be good, which is about the Road Warriors.
Oh yeah, I'm not excited to see. I'm curious to see.
Yeah, I'm like, all right, it's like because it revealed this wasn't something they had planned. This was like Animal was like, "Hey, I like your guys' show. We should do an episode about the Road Warriors," and they were like, "Okay." So that seems to be like the genesis of how this.
You got some dirt? No.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
What y'all do?
Right. Yeah. So it's like, all right, that's cool. Road Warriors is dope. So see how that goes.
Also did cocaine, and we also had hookers.
That's
So-
true. And they also got in a lot of fights.
There you go.
Yeah, so yeah, it should be fun. But that's all we got to say about this old cocaine and cowboy boots, the Herb Abrams story. So yes, if you like the video, hit the like button. Thanks for watching. Avery, let the people know where they can find you.
You can find me everywhere. Now you can find me on YouTube. Just search the Avery Jones Podcast. I'll come right up. As well as on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Radio Public, and a whole bunch of other platforms that I don't know about now.
Yeah, Breaker and all that shit. Yeah, it's
Right,
a lot
Breaker.
of Podbean, all those things.
Right.
I got
Anchor.
Anchor. Yeah, I'm on that too. You can look up BrogiNaric, you can find it. But
There you go.
yes,
It gets it done.
yeah, gets it done. Yeah. So thanks for watching. Thanks for joining me. We're gonna be back, like I said, next week for the Road Warriors. That should be interesting. And thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more videos. Peace.